Okay, so here's section 4.4. It's going to be an overview of cellular respiration. Now, cellular respiration is split up into three different sections. There's glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. And this section just kind of gives you a very brief, like it says, overview of the three sections. Believe it or not, we could spend this entire 3-week period doing just glycolysis. It's a 10-step process. There's so many crazy scientific terms for what's coming and what's going, but we're going to kind of stay to the very basics, if you will. So, to start it off, if oxygen is available, organisms can obtain energy from food by a process called cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the process that releases energy from food in the presence of oxygen. Cellular respiration captures energy from food in three main stages, as I mentioned earlier: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. So cellular respiration is, as a whole, is considered to be aerobic or requires oxygen. And the aerobic stages of this particular process takes place in the mitochondria. Okay, you guys remember the mitochondria from studying the cell. Now here's the deal. So I talked about how there's three stages, and glycolysis is the first. So although cells can use just about any food molecule for energy, we're going to concentrate specifically with a simple sugar called glucose, which is C6H12O6. Glucose first enters a chemical pathway known as glycolysis. Only a small amount of energy is captured to produce ATP during this stage. In fact, at the end of glycolysis, get ready for this, about 90% of the chemical energy that was available in glucose is still actually unused and is actually locked in the chemical bonds of a molecule called pyruvic acid. Now here's the deal. Glycolysis is part of cellular respiration, but it's actually considered anaerobic, meaning it doesn't require oxygen. And instead of taking place in the mitochondria, it's actually going to take place in the cytoplasm. So you need to make sure you understand that cellular respiration as a whole, and then the glycolysis is kind of like the or the first step. So basically it's going to split glucose into two 3-carbon molecules, and that 3-carbon molecule is considered pyruvic acid, and we're going to get more into that in the next section. And as a whole, glycolysis will produce two ATP or energy molecules. Oh, wait. Okay, my bad. So now we're going to talk about the Krebs cycle. First, the pyruvic acid, which is that 3-carbon molecule, is going to enter into the second stage of cellular respiration, known as the Krebs cycle, where a little more energy is generated. It's going to take place in the mitochondrial matrix, and basically the Krebs cycle breaks down that pyruvic acid, or that 3-carbon molecule, and it makes a small amount of ATP. The Krebs cycle is going to release some carbon dioxide, and it's going to transfer some energy-carrying molecules to the electron transport chain. So here's an example, or here's the picture of the Krebs cycle, and you can see that's happening in the mitochondria. So the electron transport chain produces the most ATP in the entire cellular respiration. It's going to take place in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. The energy is going to be transferred to the ETC. Oxygen enters into the process. ATP is produced. Water is released as a waste product. So this stage requires the reactants from the other two stages of the process, from glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. Recall that the mitochondria are structures in the cell that convert chemical energy stored in food to usable energy for the cell. Glycolysis actually occurs in the cytoplasm, as we had mentioned earlier, but the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, which generate the majority of the ATP during cellular respiration, take place in the mitochondria. If oxygen is not present, another anaerobic pathway known as fermentation makes it possible for cells to keep glycolysis running, generating ATP to power cellular activity. We're going to go into cellular fermentation in section 4.6, so don't necessarily worry about that. Just know that that's what's going to happen if oxygen is not present. There is another anaerobic pathway. So even though the Krebs cycle does not directly require oxygen, it is classified as aerobic process because it cannot run without the oxygen requiring electron transport chain. As you can see, cellular respiration requires oxygen and a food molecule such as glucose and gives off carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Do not be misled by the simplicity of this equation. If cellular respiration took place in just one step, all of the energy from glucose would be released at once and most of it would be lost in the form of light and heat. Clearly, a living cell has to control the energy. It can't simply start a fire. The cell has to release the explosive chemical energy in the food molecule a little bit at a time. The cell needs to find ways to trap those little bits of energy and make them by using them to make ATP.